there is a question from, I hope I pronounce it well, Michelle Cheng. And she asked if I believe WHO can suggest simple means to clean face mask, gloves, and protective gloves under SAS in low resource regions. So if Adriana, you want to take this question and provide your thoughts. Adriana, probably you're muted. Okay, go.
Yes. Sorry, Leandro. I was reading other questions, but you say to reuse cloth masks.
One question was to reuse and clean. Yes.
Yeah.
There is a document from WHO.
The cloth masks can be washed and reused again, of course, but they are not considered PPE. They're not considered a medical device. They're protecting the person to splash or to send the droplets out of their, to the other persons, but in reality that does not, it is not medical masks. And yes, they should be cleaned. The only ones that could be re-sterilized are the N95 using the Steris method, and that has been totally approved. There are other ways to re-sterilize and reuse. Some of those are using oxide peroxide, other ones are using ultraviolet light. And maybe we can ask Ying to present, because they're doing another study now on research to try to define other methods for re-sterilization and reuse. So,
yep.
Ying.
Okay, sure. So there is a 3-month rapid research project that is looking into decontaminating masks, not only respirators. So a lot of the studies that are peer-reviewed and used for the guidance in the rational use of PPE document that Adriana presented, there is a vaporized hydrogen peroxide decontamination method that is okayed by the FDA for emergency use authorization. But in terms of low resource settings and what can be done, such as dry heat and methylene blue plus light or other innovative processes, we will have a results from that study in June. It's actually taking place right now. So there are 2 branches of the study where one is testing the virucidal efficacy and the other branch is testing the performance. So hopefully an update on rapid findings can be incorporated in the rational use of PPE document that I think I sent a link out, and Adriana explained very clearly about that. So as Adriana said, it's also, they're not medical devices, they're actually called non-medical masks. And so they are varied and depending on the decontamination process or washing process, depends on the materials of construction, and those vary quite a lot. But that document should be coming out very soon, and there's a little bit of a guidance on how to clean and what to consider.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer. Meanwhile, there are several questions coming both into the chat and into the question and answer box. I invite the attendees to use the question and answer box rather than the chat, because here we can easily answer or dismiss. Meanwhile, Adriana invited me to make a comment on the European situation, and the European Commission has issued, as Adriana said, the 13th of March, for the very first time, a recommendation through which was recommending notifying body to use WHO guidance regarding an simplification of harmonized standard. Now, we know that those standards, they are meant to cover PPE, which are supposed to be used in any working environment, including carpentry and other things. So where the worker has to be protected by risks, which are not every time related to hospital conditions. So probably now in time of COVID, the European Commission has recommended notified body to grant a certification specifically for COVID, limited to COVID crisis, so let's say 1 year, doing just part of all the tests which are within those standards, and disregarding those which are not strictly relevant, such as the one exposing the mask to a temperature above 70 degrees, because this is not a condition which is really relevant for hospital. So we recently published the paper on that. Probably Roy can circulate this paper together with the remaining material. But what is the opinion of WHO in this regard? What are really the essential?
The link to the paper is in the references. Go ahead.
Thank you. What is the real list of tests that we should pay attention? We saw the solution presented also in Africa, but this is going on wherever. And probably people, they don't even try because those performance standards, they are too high and not relevant. Is there a list of essential tests that we should focus on?
Do you want to respond or me?
You could respond.
Yeah, Leandro, what we're doing is we're taking all the standards and we're reviewing exactly what is more critical than the others. But still, we have not released any kind of protocol or process to do that. We are now in really at an extreme situations in which what we need to do is just verify if the products that we get, they comply with international standards or not. And we're just clearing them as soon as they come because there is a lack of personal protective equipment and it is manufactured just in some places and sometimes not even the tests are done. So we really need, we're really into that, but eventually it will be a very good opportunity to develop just standards only for these products. And as you all know, all protective equipment was done for industrial purposes. And that's what we found when we were talking about Ebola and now for COVID. They were made for chemistry, painters, or many other, in other sectors and other industry, not only for health. So we should focus just on health and maybe be able to draft some new standards. So we think COVID is really helping us to readdress many other things. So yes, WHO will be in a position to start drafting new standards. WHO develops standards for medicines and for vaccines, but not for medical devices. And now I think this is the time. The time has come to do it. Thank you. There was some, Leandro, can I respond some questions from the question and answer? There was some about the globes. So I just wanted to share, this time we're just focusing on masks and face shields, but of course we will, if you think other topics are important for all of you, please send them through the question and answer or the chat so that we can consider them for future sessions. Ying, do you want to answer something else from the, or any of the others? It's something that is very important. Kun Seng, you're asking about other types of respirators. And so I think that's a very important issue. When we're talking about, let me take my video. When we're talking about ventilators, the healthcare worker has to put the intubation, and that moment it can be getting the splash from the patient. And that is, once it is intubated, then they can get less droplets, but they have to be very well protected. But when we're talking non-invasive ventilation, like in the case of the CPAP and BPAP, and so in which there is a high pressure of oxygen be given to the patient in a mask, but then if there are leaks in the mask or the moment that they're putting it, that is when the droplets of a contaminated person or a very sick person in the intensive care unit can splash to the healthcare worker. And that is exactly the moment in which they get infected. So it is, if there is a compromise, if you use a ventilator, then a little bit of PPE will make it. I mean, of course, you have to have your N95 and everything. But if you're using CPAP, BPAP, or any others that have the aerosol, you have to super reinforce the protective equipment. And that becomes very important. So it is balanced to make sure that the healthcare worker doesn't get contaminated. So that is on that part. Ying, I don't know if you want to respond to other questions from the.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to respond on the question and answer.
Yeah.
But I agree with everything you say. So I think, is there anything would you like me to pitch in for?
About the
Guys, what about the 3D printing of face shields and all that stuff? I mean,
Tom, there was a meeting with the IMDRF regulators. This is from Europe, US, Canada, Australia, Japan, etc. And we are dealing with that, like a 3D printing, mass 3D printing, swabs 3D printing, many things. We need to make sure that they comply with the standards and with the tests that we have. So that has not been totally tested, not for all the products. So that's something that is still in process. Over.
In this regard, the British Standard Institute, stimulated by the same question, has been producing a sort of form where they are actually collecting the specification of the 3D printer. Because when you say 3D printing, you don't say exactly which kind, and I mean, this is a big family of objects. So what the BSI is doing, together with already a shortened version of the test to be done on PPE, especially visors, they have issued a small form where they collect also information about the technology used for 3D printing, because clearly this can make a big difference. And by doing so, this is also an invitation to users and producers and manufacturers to reflect on the technology they have, if it is adequate or not, and if whatever they do can be replicated. I mean, after all, quality means that whatever you do next, it's exactly as you did before, and eventually this is exactly as you have designed the object to be. And so this is really important, that people pay attention also to the fact that 3D printing is a huge range of objects, and there are those for few, tens of bucks, which probably are not as good as the professional ones. So we need to be responsible, first of all. So please, if you see any other question Yingling is doing a fantastic job. She has already answered 17 questions into the question and answer box. So all the attendees can also see those questions and answers, and they will also get in the end a collection of all the questions and all the answers released by the IFMBE Clinical Engineering Division. So we will continue responding those questions offline. A question from Claudio Merovic. Maybe coveralls were already mentioned. They're not included in WHO guidelines for hospital, but they are necessary for workers, disinfection, steels, and public space. Tom suggested so the question, what is your question, Claudio?
Yeah, I got it, Leandro. There is not a specific recommendation for coveralls. We were using gowns, and then we have the surgical gowns and the non-surgical gowns, but we were not talking coveralls. We will be adding coveralls too, and something that has come very importantly is shoe covers, because it seems the droplets go into the top of the shoes of the healthcare workers, and that has been an issue. So as I said, we are changing and adapting the list almost every 2 or 3 weeks. So as you know, the DCP is already version 5, and we are updating it constantly depending on the available evidence. But yes, Claudio, so we will update that. Usable respirators for local production of masks. Menelik Dida. Well, I don't know, Leandro, if you want me to respond directly here as Ying, or?
Please do.
Okay. In the questions and answers. We have been asked as WHO to provide guidance for local production of masks. So we are developing that document. It went through regulators in the African Medical Devices Forum. We had a draft. Because there are new guidelines from other regulatory authorities, we are updating it, and we're also updating it because new guidelines on the use of masks will become available normally next week. So as soon as we know, we will send it to all of you. And as English says, it talks about the different type of mask, a different kind of process. And so we want not to release the local production until that other document is released. But yes, we're finding, to try to find solutions for local production, and then the non-medical masks and the medical masks. But of course, if at least the non-medical masks are produced, then at least it will help protect the public in general. Over.
Good, thank you. And there was a comment from Tom, which I completely agree. We are getting a lot of questions about sterilization, reuse, washing. Yeah. Probably we can organize a next webinar on this topic, because a lot of questions are about the reuse.
Yeah, they want to know the reuse. So we will talk about that. And I prefer, Leandro, that we do that once the new guidelines from WHO are available. So might be 2 weeks. Then we
Yeah, it's already scheduled a little later, so we'll time it together
thank you,
with that.
Tom.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Michael Chen was asking about the oxygen helmets. What we are talking about is what we used to call the oxygen hoods are not recommended by WHO. We're talking about nasal cannulas. We're talking about BPAP, CPAP, and ventilation. And the oxygen hoods are basically not added unless in some cases, in some hospitals, they use the hood over the CPAP just to diminish aerosoling to the healthcare worker. No? But that really depends on the criticality of the patient and the availability to breathe or not, and the pressure that their lungs need to have. So these links now with the ventilators, and we will be talking about that in the next sessions, and also about the CPAP and BPAP.
We're going to have to move on, Leandro.
We move on the oxygen and answer a few questions coming from the previous webinar. And this is also an invitation I want to give to all the attendees. Please continue post your questions. We will try to answer offline, and those which are recurrent will be answered during the next webinar, because we really care about providing